Good evening. Welcome to live stream. Nice to see you, nice. So welcome. If this is the first time you've been on live stream, and I'm going to explain to you how it works. So I do these talks every Sunday at 6 p.m. French time. You can find information about it on my website. Make sure that you always check my website before the stream because sometimes I can't make it. I also post on YouTube when I can't make it as well. So it's clear for you. You can ask me questions through Skype, and my Skype address is Lisa Cairns 12. That's Lisa Cairns 12, and you can just send me a friend request now, and I will accept it. And you can either write a question or you can put "call me," and then I will call you when I'm ready. Don't just call in. Wait for me to call you because we're slightly out of time and it interrupts my flow. So please wait. Also, if you want to ask a question and speak in a live call-in, please make sure that you think about what it is that you want before you ask a question. Like what it is you want to ask and what it is you want out of the call. And what I'm looking for is calls where you're asking a question or working on a particular seeking dynamic. I'm not so interested in just chit-chatting. And I know you can get into the spiritual idea of like just calling in and seeing what happens, which is really beautiful, and I'm not totally against that. But often my experience is it works a lot better if you know the direction you're going in these call-ins. Yes. I always like to start with a bit of a meditation and then we move on to talks. And just a note to talk about sessions. So the only thing I'm doing at the moment is one-to-one sessions, and I'm changing next year the way in which I work. I'm reducing the amount of sessions I do per week, and I'm going to concentrate on working with people that I've already been working with regularly. And then occasionally I might have gaps for other people. It's going to be harder to get a session with me. You can write and put your name on the waiting list. And if you are somebody that's regular, then I will write you in time and give you new booking dates for the new year. I'm currently booked up all the way till December 2021. So I won't write to you more than likely till December to send you new dates for next year. But you can always get yourself put on the waiting list, and then hopefully one day you will get a session, but I don't know when or how long. I'm going to start either this year or next year doing paid online sessions. So this one is free for everybody, and I'm going to start doing Zoom calls where you pay a donation or you pay a small amount and it's not recorded. So you can speak more freely, and it's through Zoom, so I can play music when we do meditation because it's not going on YouTube. And it's just private. It's not shown on YouTube. It's just the people that are there. But you have to give a small donation for that one. And I'll let you know more about that. You can sign up to my website, my website, which is just my name, lisacairns.com. And you will get notifications. Maybe I'm not very good at sending out newsletters about these events. And maybe I do a retreat next year. Who knows? I haven't done one in the last. Sorry, I'm just reaching to get my drink. I haven't done one in the last year and a half, I think. Or maybe it's like 2 years, coming up to 2 years. I didn't do one last year. Yeah, it must be 2 years. Maybe it was like October 2019 I last did one. Yeah, rock and roll. Okay, so we shall start with some silent sitting. So I realize sometimes I really don't explain things and I just expect people to know. So when I speak spontaneously. And what that means is that I don't have, even though I have a title for this talk, I don't actually have like a destination of where I'm going to and what I want to speak about, and haven't planned it or thought about it. I've always spoken spontaneously, so I just speak about this spontaneously. And I suspect, like my feeling is that you learn non-duality through verbal communication and through energetic communication. So there is some sort of intellectual resonance that happens, but then on a deeper level it's energetical, like a sense of something bigger than what you are. And like, I don't have a method, I just speak about this subject, and I presume if there was going to be a method, which I really don't feel there is, because who would have the method, but if there was, it would be like a resonance with the talks. And yeah, and through that resonance, then I feel like non-duality like penetrates more and more the life, if I said that word right, penetrates, permeates, yeah, confusion of words. Yeah. So we're just going to now do a bit of a meditation. Before we do the meditation, I think I'm just going to move the camera, because I think I'm going to get in a muddle here. So I'm just going to put you lovely people back to the music. Or maybe you can just start meditating. Maybe I leave it on and I will ring my gong and you start meditating. And what I mean by meditation is really doing whatever you feel. So you can just sit there and let the mind think and let the mind do what it wants to do. You could do something like the mindfulness of breathing, so counting your breath up to 10. So every time you count in, you count 1, and 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10, and then when you get to 10, you go back to 0. The other thing you could do is moving your attention to the I am. But to do this knowing that I'm not actually prescribing something. This is a description of what could happen. Like, you might sit there thinking I'm in control and I can now practice this, whereas actually that's not the truth. It either happens or not. I say these words and that either manifests in that body. And then secondly, the idea that you are someone that's going to get somewhere is the illusion. So who is this I that believes it's going to get to liberation or get to meditation or get to something? So seeing that that is the illusion. Okay, now we start meditating. I'm just going to move the camera and the seat around. So it might be a bit chaotic, so you can just shut your eyes and enjoy the silence. You don't need to look at me. I will turn my microphone off. Yeah, we'll mostly do this like 5-10 minutes. Yes, and maybe I might come on and do a little bit of speaking in a very deep voice that's relaxing like this. So just feeling what's happening inside of your body. And being open to the idea that in actuality, there is no inside and outside. So even though you're having sensory perception now, that sensory perception isn't separate from that which it's perceiving. It's one and the same thing. And it's totally empty. The sensory perception isn't happening for anybody, to anybody. It's happening in this infinite space of what we are. It's alive, it's free, it's beautiful. So in your mind, you might think, I am sitting on this seat. But what's the actual experience beyond that? Who is this I sitting on a seat? Where is this I sitting on the seat? There is sitting happening for nobody. But you can't even call it sitting. In actuality, it's just experiencing happening. It's non-located. It can only be located in the mind, in thoughts, in ideas. So who is sitting here now? Who is listening to me? Who is separate from me? These words are happening, but who do they happen to? Who is listening to them? And where does listening start and stop? You might begin to notice that the hearing and the heard are one and the same thing. The feeling and the felt are one and the same thing. The observer and the observed are one and the same thing. All there is consciousness and this alive, radical sense of being, and that's what's always been here. Always. The personalities come and gone. The ideas have come and gone. Thoughts come and go. But this consciousness and beingness never comes and goes. The body ages, the body changes. But what you are beyond that never comes and goes. There's nothing to get right now. There's nowhere to go right now. All of that's an imagination. There's just what's happening. Hello. So I have to remind myself what the talk is called. It is called What do people mean when they speak about seeking? Nice. What do people mean when they speak about seeking? Seeking, seeking, seeking. What is seeking? Okay. Lost gates. So you can write your questions in Skype while I'm speaking. And if you want to call me, I'll do an introduction for about 20 minutes and then we can speak question and answer after that. If you want to call me, put call me and don't put anything else so I can see who wants to call in. And call-ins get the preference. Yes. So I actually can't determine what other people mean when they speak about seeking. I can only speak about my own interpretation of what people mean when they speak about seeking. Really. I obviously didn't think enough when I wrote that. Or it was just perfect. Yeah. So seeking to me is actually the separation. And to me, it's actually the identification with self. So the seeking is what creates the identification with the body-mind mechanism. So the body-mind mechanism has conditioning. It has traumas, it has joys, it has ways of being, it has habits and conditions that are genetic and socially conditioned. But then there's also this seeking element which makes consciousness and the personality structure become entwined. And who knows what comes first? It's a bit like a chicken and an egg. If there is the intertwinement and then seeking arises, or there's intertwinement or the seeking and then this arises. But they're kind of the same thing. And seeking is this energy that feels like happiness and my freedom comes through time. Whereas happiness and freedom is this present moment, is what you are. It's so profound. It is consciousness. And this is true freedom. This is the only freedom you find in this life. But most of the time people think that freedom is something that you get in the future and avoid from the past. So actions that you've done in the past maybe cage you or free you, and actions that you're going to get in the future either cage or free you. And there is this holding on to that story of you and an over-investment in it, a belief that you have to make your story work, that you have to do things in order to be lovable, you have to do things in order to be free, or not do things. Whereas actually freedom is this moment. It's not a time-bound thing. Pleasure and pain is time-bound. So if I now got a knife and stabbed my leg, that is time-bound. In a way, everything's not time-bound. Everything is this moment, but it's seemingly time-bound, as in it's going to fricking hurt. It might even kill me. So that will have an effect in time, and that will create pain in time, more than likely. Could create pleasure. We do not know. But more than likely, from assessing past experiences, stabbing my leg would be painful. But we can't guarantee that. We're never 100% certain of anything, because life is really freaking mysterious. Like, we don't even know why it's happening, and let alone anything else. We don't even know who we are. Like, we can know who we are, but we can't actually step outside of who we are and look at who we are and be like, oh, look, that's who I am. We just are who we are. We can't actually know it separate from it. I'm getting complex. Yeah, so seeking feels like an agitation. It's not resting deeply now. It's like an agitation in time. Like, this isn't quite enough. There is something else that needs to be got. So it's actually the opposite to deep rest. So that deep rest that you think when you pay off your house, when you get out of debt, when you find your lover, when you have kids, when you travel the world, when the C word is gone, when you get your partner to do this, or you get married, whatever it is that you think you need, you think that, or you imagine that that is going to be the deep rest. That is going to get you there. Whereas the truth is, nothing's going to get you there. It is here. I remember TP, Tony Parsons, he always used to say, I don't know if he still says it, like, everyone believes that God is inside the church or the chapel or the stupa, the monument, that the religious experience, what you're looking for, is in a place, a destination. And he used to say, and what most people fail to perceive is that God is putting on your Sunday clothes for church, stepping into the car, the feeling of the steering wheel, the driving along the road, the sights, the sounds, the visions, stepping out of the church, stepping out of the car, walking up the steps and entering the church. Like, it's not just found in a place. I remember there's this really beautiful poem from Rumi. That's basically, it's not in the stupa, it's not in the yoga position, it's not in bending your legs around your neck or doing 1,000 prostrations. It's here, what you are now. It doesn't mean that you don't do practices in order to become more grounded and centered and live a better human life. It's that freedom isn't time bound. Freedom is this moment. God, it's so profound, so deep. We take these words often, I know I used to, like, yeah, freedom is this moment, but it's so deep. And when it's seen to be in time, then seeking arises. So when you lose connection with what you are as consciousness, then the seeking arises, and then there is a sticking to the personality. When waking up and when that detachment happens, there can still be seeking patterns. Like, I would say I have still old seeking patterns acting out, because it's a habit. Like, the body is conditioned for me, for the first 30 years of my life to, if it feels tired or uncomfortable, to go towards the food cupboard. Although that's really falling away now. Since my bump on head, I've had a profound change with food. I was never like that bad with food, but I stopped eating sugar completely and started only eating slow released food. And then I'm obviously mostly a vegan. I do eat eggs and sometimes have accidents with cheeses. And I don't eat food that's quick releasing sugar generally. So it's really limited my food in a way, but also super healthy now. But I know the last few days I was very, very tired and I'd overworked and overpushed myself. And so then therefore, and it was also the weather got colder. There was a temptation to go towards food. And that to me I would see as a habit, and maybe an old seeking pattern, but also a habit as well. Yeah. So the body does that. But there's nothing that's going to free you. This moment is the deep rest. This moment. So whatever you're daydreaming about, isn't it, even if you're daydreaming of enlightenment, that is seeking. Doesn't mean, I'm not saying you don't buy a car or you don't plan things with your partner or your children or go on holiday. It's just not going to give you what you're looking for. Nothing is going to give you what you're looking for. What you're looking for is always this moment. And there's nothing outside that. This is enough. And so what is this? Like I spoke about it in the meditation today. So this moment is actually really bizarre, and it's not an activity that you do. Even though sometimes you can practice activities to be more present, and I'm not opposed to that. Actually, this moment isn't something you do. It's something that you already inherently are. So when you wake up in the morning, you don't turn on consciousness. You don't turn on this world. This world turns on, and then you, the illusory you, the personality structure and the character appears in that. But you don't turn that on. And that's because it's something that you inherently are, beyond the personality, beyond doership, beyond control, beyond anything human. It's there, it's what you are. So if we go with consciousness rather than this moment, you could say consciousness is inherently there. So you wake up and we think that consciousness gets turned on. It's not actually that consciousness gets turned on, it's that things come back. Consciousness was already there, it was just in deep rest. It was in non-existence. But just the things come back. And the consciousness isn't separate from the things. It is all the things. It's everything. But it's not something you do. So normally people say, I'm being conscious, and then you believe that you're moving your consciousness around the world. So you're looking at things and you're doing things and you're moving your attention. But that's actually what I call personal awareness. So to move the lens, so to move your attention from your big toes to your computer, to the sound of my voice, to the sounds outside, that is personal awareness that's being moved. But prior to that, there is a consciousness that's conscious of that personal awareness, that's conscious of everything that's behind me without thought. And it switches on in the morning time. And then often what happens is then you have to remember who you are. You sort of wake up and you're like, where am I? Who am I? And you slowly come back. But the consciousness is there. The consciousness is there in every experience, and it never moves. The world moves. So if you walk out of here and go into another room, the world moves, but you're always in the same consciousness. So the body seemingly moves through the world, but you are always in the same consciousness. You could think of it a little bit like a game that you're playing on the computer. Even though it looks like you're moving through a world in that game, so say if it's a 3D game, it looks like your character is moving through a world. It's actually just the lights on the screen changing to create different shapes and images. So you could say that the whole game is this still light, this one light, changing formation, giving the appearance of all this movement of worlds happening. I'm not saying that's exactly what consciousness is doing. I don't really know how consciousness functions. But this consciousness is always still, and the world moves through it. It's always here. And that consciousness is in every experience. You can't switch off, just be like, hang on, let me switch off consciousness for a moment. You can kind of like lose personal awareness, like get lost in thought and not have focus in personal awareness. But consciousness can't be shut off. Even if you're really lost in thought and really suffering, the consciousness is still there watching everything. And it's not behind the eyes. Often when you first get into the subject, they say behind, behind, behind. Consciousness is back, back, back. But it's actually forward, forward, forward. The consciousness is the wall, it is the blind, that's what I'm looking at, it is the cupboard, it is the seat, it is the body, it's everything that's experienced. It's so cool. It is everything, the consciousness. And the consciousness is not actually a thing, so you could eventually get consciousness down to nothing appearing as everything. Because consciousness isn't actually something that you can grasp, it is actually the appearance of everything. And a knowing of the appearances of everything. But it doesn't it's not actually a thing that we can grasp in this world. Like anything you think about it is already too late, you've already lost it. Like it's actually really mysterious, it's right here and it's experiencing. So what keeps people seeking and believing that they'll find things in the story is that they're not ready to give up on the story yet. So they still believe that something in the story will free them. Like if I do that, I will be free. If I do this, I will be free. It reminds me, I think I've said this many times to you, about the end of The Lord of the Rings, where Frodo is telling Sam that he has to go on the boat to nowhere with Gandalf because he can't live that life anymore. And he says to Sam, you know, you've still got dreams, you've still got ambition, you've still got things to do, you've got family, you've got this life to live out, whereas I don't have that anymore. There's nothing left here for me to do. It sounds quite sad because we're so ingrained in the belief that seeking is freedom. Like trying your best to get somewhere, like going down the motorway, like here I come. On the way to get something. Whereas that's not true. Just make sure everything's still working and on. We are still working and on. And see if you still heard me. It's the wrong one. Do you still hear me? Yes. So consciousness is also something you can't get because you are it. It's that which is looking out now. It's that which is here. It's that which is experiencing. And the person, the seeker, can't get that. So even if you seek enlightenment, whatever you seek in this life, you can't actually get it, because who would get it and how would they get it? Because you is something in time. It's a movement in time. Like it's imagination that's coming and going. So you would imagine yourself getting something. Wherein in every moment what's happening is imagination and habit and conditions acting out. So the body is acting out habits and conditions, and then there's this imagination of you as a person getting consciousness or getting freedom. And all of it's story, it's not truth. It's okay to have that story, and it's okay to be motivated by that story, but you're never going to get consciousness. You are it. And waking up is that deep realization, that movement back to a stillness that's here. This expansiveness that's here, because you're often the sense of self and seeking feels like it's inside the body, so you feel limited to inside the body. And then this waking up is this expansion back into things. Like your essence is everywhere and all things, and what we could call love, unconditioned love. Nice. Okay, we can move on to questions. So remember, if you want to call in, please put call me with nothing else after. You can write the question out if you want beforehand, but let the last thing be call me so I can see it in the Skype chat. And I will take preference to calls. I really enjoy speaking with people. And if you cheat, please remember, if you want to call in, to keep it to a question. So asking a question about non-duality, or talking about a seeking dynamic, or wanting to explore a dynamic that's appearing in you. Something like that. So not calling in for a chit chat, or not calling in to see what happens, like calling in with that direction. It just makes it more easy and more fluid. So hey Nick, nice rainbows. Hey Joan, I have to lean in to read it. Okay. Hi, I currently live at home again with my family due to pandemic. I have been brought up with my own unique family system. There is trauma, I also believe, from past lives living in our family. I'm sure in every family. I've gone through some years where I blamed them for what they had done, etc. I guess you kind of go through that period. Now, some years later, you start to see through all these stories you have told yourself and your family, and you kind of over keeping the stories alive. But then there is still this feeling when I am with them that there is complexity trauma being experienced, especially between my mum, dad and me. And to be honest, it's difficult how to navigate this. I love them. I see them getting older, the hair turning fully grey, and I start to realise I don't want to hold a grudge against them anymore. I don't want to be afraid anymore. I just want to have it simple, even with my mom and dad too. I feel this dualism confusion, so I was wondering, do you maybe have any advice on how I could navigate this? Hope that makes sense. Thanks and much love to you, Joan. Hey Joan, thanks for your question. Yeah, and that's a tense to go back home because of the pandemic. I can understand that. So I'm going to answer your question in 2 stages. I first of all want to talk about your question from the perspective of non-duality. So in the person, there is the idea to resolve all these things and to understand these things, and that can be helpful. That is a different subject in a way to non-duality. You could say that as the person becomes more free, then there is like a dropping more into non-duality. But really, from the perspective of non-duality, there is a belief that there is a you with trauma and a parents with trauma. Whereas actually that's a story that you are telling each other, or telling yourself. Maybe they don't talk about it. But it's a story that you've been taught in duality, in society. And then there is this idea that you would like to resolve that because more than likely it's painful. So more than likely interacting with them, there is pain that's acted out. But all of that is stories. This idea that there is a you there with trauma that's going to become free and going to have a simple life when you sort it out with them. And this can become a new seeking. The idea to have perfect relationships. The idea to get perfect navigation. And when you think you can do that, then you think that life will be fulfilling, or life will be more free. Maybe you think you'll be more in the moment, you'll be less seeking. And none of it's true. Where is this you right now with trauma? Who is this you with trauma? Who has trauma? And notice that you can only find an answer in the mind. So even if you say there is no me, that's an answer in the mind. But more than likely what happens is you imagine yourself with the trauma, but that's in the mind. What's happening right now? Where is this you with trauma? Where is this limitation? And where is this trauma? Who is this you? So your mind might scream, me, me, me. But actually, right here, right now, there is simply space. None of it matters. There is nothing happening. And yet seemingly there is everything happening. There's this clearness, this pureness, this aliveness. Just knowing this deeply, coming to see this deeply, 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 but it's not your activity. It can be relaxing for the person if you keep breaking the attention of the mind and bringing it back to this present moment, but it's not exactly that. That's still an effort of the person. This consciousness is never affected by anything. It feels like it is when this is like the person and the consciousness and one and the same thing, but it's actually never affected. It's huge, it's expansive, it's free. It's free. So that's my first part of my answer. The second part of the answer is to then we can look at the seeking pattern. Because what happens is these seeking patterns can be strong, and so therefore there is a lot of pull of energy into the timeline. So we can actually explore that, and it can relax that pull of energy that's pulling you into past and future. So the story is how to deal with this trauma. You can deal with the trauma inside of yourself, but you have to be realistic about your relationships. If the other people aren't prepared to do the work, then it's always going to be a little bit like walking with them with someone without a leg. Like walking without a leg, because you can't do all the work for them and fix it. So say if the trauma is, I don't know, I'm thinking that what it results in is them treating you in a passive-aggressive way. And then the feelings that erupt in you when they treat you in a passive-aggressive way, you can only look at your feelings and your response to that and notice that and notice what happens. You can't stop them from doing that. You can't behave in a way which stops them. You can maybe try to speak to them about it and shift it a bit, but until they are dedicated to working on themselves, they're not going to shift that energy. Hey, hello. So it's always going to be one-sided. So that's one thing to say. So there is going to be a certain amount of pain that just has to be accepted in those relationships. If they were prepared to evolve and work on themselves, then you could evolve together and you could bring radical honesty to it, which would begin to heal it, I'm sure. So then it's kind of like you just have to work on yourself and just accept that there is going to be pain there if they're not prepared to work on themselves. So it's then just finding to me, it's like finding a way in which it has the least amount of impact on you. So if they are doing these passive-aggressive things, navigating it so it has the least amount of impact on you, and you try to be as honest and open, as genuine as you can. So what I do is I just try to tell people how I feel. It doesn't always manifest, but I just try to tell people how I feel. Not teach them, not preach them, but just tell them how I feel. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I get stuck in trauma and I freeze or I get pleasing. It's just noticing and recognizing that. And also recognizing that, this is a lifelong work. It's a lifelong expansion. And the freedom is beyond that, it's that which is experiencing it. There's also like loads of things you can do online. There's loads of people speaking about trauma. There's loads of workshops that you can do to try to shift that out of your body as well. But to me, it's becoming more and more radically honest. Like I'm really feeling it in your body and really getting used to that feeling in the body. So when I do this, you know, and there's deeper and deeper levels. There's many times I'm unconscious with trauma, you know, like I become pleasing. And it's really like underneath that there's a subtle trauma acting out. Saying like they're going to kill me or something. Like on the deep level it's like they're going to kill me. They're going to hurt me. I'm going to die. But on the ultimate level, it's all story. In this moment, you are free. Right here. You are free. Deek, 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 deek. Boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. Boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. Boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. You are free. Who is free? Who is free? Who let the dogs out? Who is free? Just becoming more and more authentically yourself. Just being yourself. Right here, just letting life speak you, letting life move you. And that's your authentic self. That doesn't mean without trauma. That doesn't mean you don't say to someone, I feel vulnerable, I feel scared now. It's in that actually you're being authentically yourself, and in that you disappear. So there's no judgment. If anger arises, crying arises, joy arises, it's like coming to the depth of it. So there's no you in relationship with it. It's just as it is. Thank you, Joan, for your question. Oh. Hello, just making sure everything's working. Yes. Everything is working. Hey, Thomas. Beautiful guided meditation. Oh, danke, Thomas. Lucas, hang on, let's just see if anyone's got call me on there. So remember, if you, here we go. Dancing. Shiva says call me. Okay. Yes. So I'm just about to call Dancing Shiva. Sometimes people are behind. So they don't know, like I'm saying yes to them and they don't know they're going to get a call. So they're not prepared. I can see they haven't seen that message. I'll just give them a moment to catch up. Yeah, and hello to people on chat. Chatty chat chat. I don't really answer questions on chat. Sometimes if they run out on Skype, I've answered them, but most of the time I don't. I answer on Skype. My Skype address is Lisa Cairns 12. Okay, so dancing is ready. Okay, so dancing is ready.
All right. Hi.
Hey, so you listen to me through Skype and then you just have to turn the volume off of YouTube.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Okay. We'll take care of that. Is ready. All right. Hi. Hey. There it goes.
Yeah. Nice. How are you today? How can I help you or not help you?
Well, I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, so, sure. Yeah, take your time. If you want to sit in silence for a moment, we can do that. There's no hurry.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm coming back down now.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a dilemma.
Mm.
So I've had experiences in the past where let me say it this way. What I know to be true from direct experience has been or is that none of this is real,
Mm.
and that I, there isn't this I, this person,
Mm.
that this doesn't exist either, but that what I, quote unquote, am able to experience is this vastness, this expansiveness, this pure, just, it's like being at the center of the universe. It's
Mm.
calm and knowing. And where I get confused is there is this life happening, and I don't always have a sense of that vastness. It's only
Mm.
happened a few times in my life, and I'm trying to figure out, like, uh, I'm going to use the word should carefully, but should I be aware of that expansiveness all the time, or more often, or more regularly, where the personal me disappears? Or and there's a part of me that really, 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 really wants to experience more of that consciousness on a regular basis. So I'm just confused. How do I live in this body, having had those experiences? I know everything is that consciousness. I know that all the traumas and experiences and thoughts in my head are not, well, I know that those are all consciousness. I know that. But um, it's like just those fleeting moments where
Mm.
I've that vast awareness, that sense of that vast awareness.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, is there something I should be doing to experience that?
Yeah, that's the like all-time question. Like, is what is it? So you've asked it slightly different. Like, instead of what can I do, like, is there something I should be doing? Which is kind of sweet because it's a different take on the question.
Yeah.
So just give me a moment and let's see what comes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is this beautiful contradiction because right now that totally disappears.
Mm.
Like right now, there is nobody that should or shouldn't do anything. That has to get somewhere, that has to be free. Like in this moment, there is this presence. It's everywhere, it's everything. And then the mind jumps in, and seeking jumps in, and compares your life, the past, what you've had, where you're going, what you should be. And that's relevant, that's got its relevance. Like if you hadn't had that, you'd have maybe never got into this subject and explored and found this beauty of what is. So it's not that what can I do or what should I do or is there something I should be doing. It's this dedication to yourself as consciousness. But that's not like a personal activity. You can't make yourself dedicated to something. Just like you can't make yourself have willpower to like do yoga or something every morning. You can maybe do it for a period, but it's either there or not. It's like a calling that happens. For some, it's so strong, that burning light, that it keeps manifesting this subject, keeps creating this subject.
I guess I have a question then.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm still speaking from the place of this confusion. Uh, and part of me understands what you're saying. It's still just the logical brain that's grasping what you're saying. It's just uh, having that sense of awareness. That's not the right word. There are no right words for this, for that experience. Even to call it an experience, I realize comes from the perception of a separate self. I realize, but I guess I spend 99.99999% of my awareness in this separate, uh, sense of self. And I mean, I know it's, as you said, it's not necessarily about what should I do or what can I do or any activity that this separate sense of self can do. And yet, they're identifying from this place on a regular basis. There is this sadness, this frustration that comes up. Why can't I be more aware of my awareness? Why can't I be more aware of consciousness? Why can't I be an expansive place? Why can't this sense of separate self dissolve? Can live more freely. It's
yeah. And so from that perspective, I would say that like working, like if you feel like you would like to do something, because when the seeking's there, it feels like it wants to do something. So you've begun to fall in love with this subject. There's a burning for this subject, and then the separate person feels like it wants to do something to get to consciousness, which it can't do. It's an impossibility because consciousness is already here, but it's identified with the person, so it feels like you are separate. It feels like a lot of the time you are in time and you are a person moving through time. So therefore what you can do is you can do things seemingly on the personal level to relax the personal self. But that's not going to get you to it, because you will never get to it. But it's a bit like really dense clouds in the sky. It's like thinning out the clouds and then letting that consciousness shine through. So it's not exactly an activity of you. So, and there's lots of things that you can do to relax the personal self. Like one is putting the attention in this moment. So putting your attention into consciousness, even though you can't really put your attention into consciousness because that would still be a time-based activity. It's you can kind of do this activity where it's cutting off the story and it's bringing the person to be more present. So, and even though it seems like it's you doing it, it's actually happening. It's a mechanism. There is a teaching of that to you, and then it's a mechanism that arises again and again. Just like if I taught you how to drive a car, like eventually we know from driving, like when I drive, I'm like, it's the body driving. It's not Lisa driving. Like that one's really obvious. Like you teach your body to drive, and so you can teach yourself to do that again and again and again. And eventually, it becomes uh, like ingrained in the unconscious, and it relaxes the time-bound thinking. But it's not actually your action. It's something that happens. Like, who is this I? Like, we think when we put personal volition into something that is somebody with free will and choice, but that's actually a mechanism that is training the body to do something. But it's not actually you. So when I say you, I don't actually mean that you have free will. So you can, that's one thing that you can do. And then the next thing is like exploring the feelings in the body and the stories that you're telling yourself. So in this moment, like becoming more acutely aware of what's felt in the body and what stories you're telling yourself, because often our mind is out of line with our feelings. So we're telling ourselves that we're enjoying something, and we're enjoying socializing, but actually if you really pay attention to the body, what might be happening is that you're seeking for love and attention, and when you're getting that love and attention, then it's arising as enjoyment. But you might not notice that. So it's just noticing it, and just paying attention to the body, and paying attention to, if the body's seeking or not seeking, and the body doesn't lie. Like when you really pay, like it does lie to an extent, because anger can be a secondary emotion. So there can be a deeper feeling to anger, and so what you might feel is anger in the body, but it's like when you really go deeply into the body, it doesn't lie. But when you really get to know the body, like you can have all these secondary emotions, but then you can feel underneath anger there is fear or these different things. And there's nothing wrong with any of the feelings in the body. Often we get the idea that we've got to get enlightened to get rid of these feelings in the body. They're just being human. That's what it is to be human, just like the feelings of a cat, to have emotions, or the feelings of a dog. It's what happens. We have feelings. But because we've got this intelligent mind and we've got this identity, we're often lying to ourselves about what we're actually feeling, and this exacerbates the seeking. Like, so the lying exacerbates. So if you're in a situation and you're just feeling the insecurity, so you're with humans and you feel insecure, that's not seeking, that's not identity. That's just insecurity that's arising. And that's normal to be insecure around humans. Humans are the most deadliest animal on the planet. Like, you can also be secure, but it's just acknowledging that. What creates the identity is the denial of that insecurity. So most people are denying their insecurity, and then all the layers on top of that, like trying to be better than other people, trying to get attention, trying to get love, trying to get validation. Like, that's where the identity exists.
I think I might understand what you're saying. Yeah,
Nice.
I think, yeah. So it's like a disidentification with the stories, the person who has the stories, the attachments, the interpretations of everything, and just being with the sensations that are arising. And the stories can be there too, but not believing the stories.
Yeah, totally. They're not you. And that you don't need to act anything out. So you don't need love and attention in order to be free. What's happening on a very subtle level is the mind is saying, I need love and attention to be free. But you don't really notice that. So then what happens in the social situation is maybe then attempting to be better than other people, attempting to know more than other people, attempting to, teach other people, or whatever it might be. So it's just like being really conscious of what the body is doing, but then also knowing that too isn't freedom. The actual freedom is that which is perceiving all of it. But by doing this activity, I would say you're reducing the suffering of the person, you're reducing the seeking of the person. And then it's like more fertile ground for awakening. That can also be contradicted. Life is really mysterious. So that is like a perspective that I'm saying, but I also can understand from another perspective you could contradict that. But when somebody feels like there's something that they want to do, then this is a good story to tell yourself and a good investigation. It will, even if we don't know what the results will be, but it will make your life easier for sure. Becoming more conscious, and the body doesn't lie when you really go into the body. And also the sensations are in the body actually disappears, but the sensations that are appearing are directly from God, like that is present. So that insecurity is in presence. It's right here.
Yes.
The trying to be something else than the insecurity is more in time, it's more seeking patterns.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah, that's great. I get it. Yeah, you disambiguated so many things that were, yeah, knotted together. And now it because of my own self-exploration, study, all kinds of things, everything you said makes sense to me.
Nice.
Yeah, I get it.
So in this moment, I have been helpful. Maybe 10 minutes later, there might be an interpretation unhelpful. We don't know.
There we go. I'll look for the unhelpful interpretation too. No, this is good. And this is kind of what I thought would be a helpful thing for me to do, but the way that you explained it, it ironed out some of the kinks in my thinking, the things I was getting tripped over. So
Nice.
now I can just quote unquote can disassociate.
Relax more into it.
Yeah, that's right. Relax more into the sensations, thoughts, and feelings without identifying with them. And just let them, and eventually, creating that fertile ground for awakening to occur. Excellent.
Yeah, nice. Oh, thank you. Lovely to speak with you, Dancing Shiva. I like your name.
Thank you. My name's Rob, by the way.
Your name's what, sorry?
Robert.
Robert. Nice to meet you, Robert.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for calling in. Lovely question. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Nice. Just let me go back and make sure the audio is still working. Yeah. So if you want to call in, please call me. I take my preference is to speak. But don't put anything after the call me, so just put call me in the Skype box so I can see it, as I browse down the chats. Danke. Danke. Thank you well. I love that. Thank you well. Thank you well. Doei. Okay. Apana. Hi Lisa, today you spoke so profound. I don't know if it makes sense, but for me now I see after waking up I go in and out of expanding and contracting. It's like I'm drunk and mind sees to me like slow down. Says to me, it's crazy sometimes. Bombarding energies. Can you share your experience? Yeah. That can happen. It will begin to settle. Just allow. No judgment. It's what's happening. Allow. It is what's happening. Yeah. Okay. Cassia says, call me. Yes. So Cassia, I will speak to you next. I just give her a moment, Cassia, to realize that I'm going to call her. Where are you, Cassia? Yes.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. Nice
Thanks
to
for
hear.
calling.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Lisa, I want to just a little clarification. The previous caller had such an interesting question, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around so many things to do with that, mainly to do with feelings and thoughts, where I sometimes feel I don't understand which is first. So it makes sense sometimes that the thought is the first and creates the feeling. But it's so interesting what you were talking about, that sometimes the feelings just occur. They just come from nowhere. They just, show up. So just if you could clarify a little bit, talk a little bit more about that, because I often thought, just that made sense in my head, that thoughts are what we are being taught, kind of, and we pick it up along the way, and they kind of create those feelings later on.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think it's true that thoughts create all feelings. So if you take your dog, for example, like Khaleesi can't really think. She has some sort of thinking, but I presume it happens in imagination because she can't speak. So she's not thinking, like, oh, this is going to be really scary lately, but she certainly has emotions. So it's instantaneous, so if there's a cat, or if she's jealous, so she doesn't have so many emotions as us, but she certainly has some basic emotions that are happening prior to thought. So they're just appearing. So that's also happening in us. Like our body will have responses. It's like being trained to have responses to stuff, and it will happen so quickly. It'll be before thought. It'll be interpretation. So yeah.
So it's like the instinctive mind. It's it's like an instinct. Certain things just appear, like fear, or there's different other emotions. But then also thoughts create emotions.
Yeah. So then,
is that right?
Yeah, totally. So then you have like an imagination that you're going to get in trouble when you go to work tomorrow, and then fear arises in your body.
Yes.
So yeah, there's two different types. So there is the, like, is it called somatic when it's body experience? So the somatic response, where I don't think it is called somatic, I have to forget. So where you just see something instantly in your body is having a response. And then there is the thoughts that are creating emotions. And you can also do that, like you can I've forgotten that word. When you give a job outside, you can also give it to the TV. The TV can also create it. So you can watching TV and joy can appear. and sadness and fear can appear, and that's kind of like an external thought. So it's like you're subcontracting it outwards, like.
Oh
So
yeah,
these,
oh yeah, yes.
like.
But it's just, yeah, it's just so interesting that sometimes we have those reactions or emotions, even to certain people, and you just don't know where it's coming from. I have, like really good vibes with somebody, and there's obviously no point overthinking it, but it's just interesting that our bodies don't lie, as you say. We get like positive emotions, let's say. We just feel good about something, or the opposite, That's interesting.
Yeah, totally. And what's kind of the thoughts are kind of create. So I think that our body, like my feeling is that the body is programmed in a particular way, and then what you see externally will trigger particular feelings, and then also your thoughts will trigger feelings, but they're all kind of the same feelings and will be wired in the same way. We also do have empathy, so like if I'm around someone that's sad, then generally if I'm standing, I think within like 4 meters of them, then I'll begin to feel that sadness.
Yes.
I can also get it just from looking at somebody in the eyes through the internet as well.
Oh yeah.
But so that's a different story. We'll just put that aside for now. So I think that our bodies are programmed in certain ways, and that programming most probably comes in the first 5 years of life, and it's also like genetic. So you're genetically responding to things. So in rats, they did this experiment, which I'm so sorry that they did the experiment on rats, and I'm telling the story. I don't agree with experimenting on rats, but I read about it, so now I have this information. They traumatized the mother rat with something, say it's a pencil. Maybe I told you this last time, I forget. Like they traumatize a rat with a pencil, and then the rat has babies, and then the babies haven't been traumatized by a pencil. They've never seen a pencil. They have no feeling of it. But then as soon as they see the pencil, they also have trauma to the pencil. So we also like have the trauma of like what grew us, because our DNA is information. So it's going to be information about environment. So what really impressed me about Khaleesi, so Khaleesi's a street dog. She's 100% genetic street dog. I know that sounds weird, but when I say that, I mean that like her DNA is not a domesticated dog. So there's a difference. So her DNA is like 14,000 years old. It's prior to domestication of dogs. So domestication of dogs is selectively bred dogs, where she's not selectively bred. Her DNA has been breeding on the streets for 14,000 years. Do you understand the difference? A bit like the original tomato.
God, that's amazing.
I know. It is really amazing. They even think that dingoes in Australia came from her. So dingoes have evolved to be something else in Australia. But if you actually look at a dingo and Khaleesi, they look really similar. So she is slightly more friendly than dingo, because the free-ranging dogs in Thailand also live off a lot of scraps of food from people. Whereas dingoes in Australia do, but they tend to be also more isolated. So they are a bit more friendly. Khaleesi's type.
But she's adapted, obviously.
She's what, sorry?
She adapted to being domesticated now.
Yeah, but genetically she's a non-domesticated dog. So domesticated dogs have genetically a predisposition, a way of being. So one thing that interested me with Khaleesi is that she never had to beg off tourists. So I found this very interesting. So a lot of the free-ranging dogs in Thailand, they beg off tourists with plastic bags, and you'll often see them gathering around tourists with plastic bags. And Khaleesi never did this, because she for the first few months of her life or so, she was outside a phone shop away from tourists, and then she lived in the forest, so she didn't experience tourists with plastic bags. But Khaleesi is fascinated by tourists with plastic bags, especially white tourists with plastic bags.
Oh wow.
It's really like interesting, like as soon as she sees someone with a plastic bag, and that must be genetic in her DNA, because obviously like for many generations, like street dogs have been begging off white tourists that go to Koh Phangan Island, so Koh Phangan in Thailand, and they've passed it's like genetically been passed on because she didn't learn that.
Yeah. So yeah, it does make sense. It's like certain things that we have a predisposition to, or it's like a framework. The genetics are like a framework we are born with.
Yep. And then you've got the first 5 years of life which socialize you. So we don't ever see this, the genetics and the first 5 years of socialization. So we don't ever actually get to look outside of it and say, okay, this is what my personality structure will be like. We can do it to our dogs. We can watch their children and watch it get passed on, but we can't actually really do that with ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's going to give you a predisposition. So if you have a trauma, if your family line has got a trauma, say with sexuality, then that will manifest in your life, and you will have instinctual responses to it instantly.
Yeah.
Like it's not something you'll be able to see in your life. You might not even be able to relate it in your life because you might think, I didn't have any sexual. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying this happened to you.
Yes.
I don't have any like difficulties in this life with sexuality, but there is like a predisposition to it and a fear to it, and that is something that we're always going to be working on and evolving. Like that's evolving the human species, and those responses happen instantaneously. When you have thoughts, you're triggering those responses. So your thoughts are triggering all your predisposition. So you've got a particular way of being, and then your thoughts are just triggering it. So rather than an external experience triggering it, your thoughts are triggering it. And your thoughts are seen as no different than the external experience.
And then would thoughts be appearing more of a certain kind, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Kind of in line with the way we are built genetically.
And the way that we were socialized in the first 5 years of life, which will also, because we're brought up by family members most of the time, your socialization will be very similar to your genetic predisposition, because your parents will be socializing you, which will also have the predisposition to your particular genetics. So yeah, so totally. So you will. So I noticed that I have similar traumas, responses to my parents and to my siblings. So I noticed that that we have as a family a story.
Yes.
I don't know if they necessarily notice it, but I can see that we have similar responses and similar ways of being.
I noticed that in my family too. Yeah. So it's all connected. So the way you are built genetically and the first few years in conditioning, it predisposes us to have a certain way of thinking
and a certain life.
Then, although the thoughts come from kind of nowhere, but we do.
They're in a pattern.
Yes, we do attract a certain type of thinking
and a certain way of life. Your thoughts will then manifest your particular life. So if you have a predisposition towards fear of failure, then you will have a life that reflects that. You will be afraid of doing things because of fear of failure. So your life will reflect back your particular story.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Like that's when like law of attraction comes in, where they say, you attract what you think. It's kind of so impersonal though. And then this is where the freedom is, because you see that you aren't the information that's playing out. The character is information which is playing out. It's a program playing out that's absolutely impersonal, and it's been playing out for many generations, and it's evolving totally. As it interacts. You are that which is watching it.
That is just mind-blowing, but it makes sense. There's one instance in my life, and I just very briefly tell you about it because this is as close as I can describe to just feeling the total oneness. And it happened spontaneously, and it lasted several hours, and it kind of faded away. I'm not sure why at that moment. Anyway, but what I can say is it felt like there was no thought whatsoever. Everything was blended together, and I was enjoying just being in the garden. I was outside, and it was during work actually. It's funny, but when the thoughts start appearing and kind of, it's as if, little puzzles falling down and just trying to make their way again as some sort of like a veil. I don't know how to describe it. It felt like they are dissecting the reality. They are separating it.
Totally.
This is what it felt like, and I don't even want to say anything more about it because it just doesn't seem accurate. But it was just that feeling where the oneness was being separated by those kind of, I don't know, programs or just the thoughts kind of trying to force themselves again on top of me, kind of. I don't know how to describe it. So
it's not inherent. It's not that thoughts are inherently the problem, but what happens is there becomes an attachment and aversion to the thoughts, and then that in itself creates the separation and then exacerbates the thinking process. So it kind of,
because we're trying to get away from it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So it's not. So thinking is like, it's something that we all have to do in order to survive. Otherwise, we'd be put into mental institutes. Like, we need to be able to think. We need to be able to comprehend certain things. So in and of itself, it's really not a problem. But then there becomes the thinking creates an uncomfortable feeling, or like tells a particular story. Then there's identification, and then the seeking starts, and then the motors get going of that separation. So in you, it was like a dissecting, and that dissecting made a kind of like a contraction, and then slowly the seeking came back in.
It came back in, yes. And it showed me that it's like a filter with which we see the world, and it is necessary, as you say, because you need to function. So we all have that, but it's just interesting that it's just...
And it's just a filter. Like, you can put on a different filter in a different story and the world will look completely different. Like, we're just all hypnotized into our current society's storytelling.
And like, we can get so lost in this as well.
Yeah. So the life could be really different. Like, I didn't listen to the talk, but I was just doing some research earlier, and it was a talk about biofabrication. So it was talking about being able to grow our clothes and being able to grow our materials, like from fungi, from bacteria, from algae, and I just think this notion is so cool that we can grow our living environment. And like, at the moment, like the way in which we look at living environment and the way that we look at our products, it's our particular way of looking at it. Like, we have a narrative around our homes, around our things, around our objects, and our narrative would be so completely different if we were constantly growing our environment. We'd be so much more integrated with our environment in a way if we're growing our environment constantly, if we're growing our house, if we're growing our clothes. Like, it would be a different experience of what things are. Like, our experience at the moment.
But it's like, can we change the patterns of thought quickly enough? That's the question, I suppose.
No. We can change it quickly and rapidly in one way. If you look at it from bird's eye perspective, you can, because if we see like the last 200 or 300 years,
if you see them for what they are, I suppose,
but also humans can evolve quickly. So we do have this, like, if you think 100 years ago, like, the idea of computers and what we're doing now, it would seem impossible for that society to do it. And you can also see it through the generations. Like, the younger generations are so much better at computers. So we can evolve quickly if you look at it from a bird's eye perspective. But if we look at it from our own personal experience, we can't really evolve our bodies personally very quickly. But generations, we can evolve quite quickly. And that is quite quick in terms of the life of this universe.
Absolutely. It's always worth investigating anyway, because going around in circles, sometimes, when you suffer enough, that kind of comes up, that, maybe there's a little bit of a different pathway to explore, but there's no, no saying. Everybody's just so different, and there's individual pathway of how people kind of get to notice these things in their lives. Yeah. But it's funny, yeah. The certain patterns of thought. My family, I have two brothers, and we're so This is funny how we think of certain things similar way, and similar things happening in our lives. Yeah. I wonder why. Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Yeah, with pleasure. And how is your health? Are you feeling a lot? I know I've spoken to you since, but is it improving your health?
It's improving. Yes, I was able after nearly 2 years to go and visit my family now, because first of all, it's a bit easier to travel, and also my health is improving, so I was able to get on the plane and see my folks. So that's helpful.
Nice. I'm happy to
so I am improving. I still need a bit of time, but it's all going well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice. Oh, lovely to speak with you again.
Lovely to talk to you, Lisa. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you for the question.
Talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, that's enough for today. Yeah, so there's questions that I haven't answered. It's if you want to ask them next week, they might be answered. But generally, I favour call-ins, not all the time. So hi Anthony, hi Regine, hi Gina, hi Ramsey, hi Joyful Silence, hi Johnny, hi Johnny. I've forgotten how to say your name, I'm sorry. Yeah, Yanito. Ah! But yeah, lovely to share with you all. And I shall see you next Sunday. And I wish you everything. Not just one thing, not two things, but everything. Yeah. Yes. Have a lovely evening or day.